Happy Thursday. Happy Thursday, everybody, and welcome to Remove Logic Radio Show. I'm your host, Karen Ray Lacey. And once again, we meet here on another Thursday evening on Fishbowl Radio Network. And I am so glad, absolutely elated, that you decided to join me again tonight. For those of you who are joining for the first time, Remove Logic Radio Show is a place for individuals who are stuck to get unstuck. You're empowered by biblical, faith-based application, wisdom, and strategies for everyday life. Why remove logic? Logic itself is a means of a framework to understand something. Anything that we apply logic to is just we're wrapping around it our understanding. And for something to be illogical, it must be outside of that framework. So here at Remove Logic, we believe that God is not bound by logic or logistics. So we say remove logic. And today I choose to look beyond logic. So that is who we are, and that is what I believe. So I'm so glad that you joined me again tonight to the Remove Logic community, the faithful ones that meet me here every Thursday night. I'm so glad that you are back again. And for you who don't know, we do have a Facebook page where you can catch some of our past episodes, as well as a YouTube channel for Remove Logic. So once again, I'm your host, Karen Ray Lacey, and I am so excited that you are here tonight. Let me ask you a question. How are you with change? How do you handle change? And what role does fear play in changing your environments and your environment begins to change? Does fear, apprehension, how do you respond, and what is your approach to change? What drives your behavior when adapting to change? And if you're in a place where change is swimming all around, and I can probably say that you are, simply because of where our nation sits right now in every day, every hour influx. So there's always change, and it just seems again to be happening and coming at us almost hourly, not daily, but hourly. And so tonight I want to talk about change. And the title of tonight's episode, let me pop it up there for you. Let's see. Call to Pivot. And we're going to look at Abraham's journey and your modern day shift, because we are truly in a shift. I believe there's so much shifting going on, a reset. Some of the things that we have always depended on are no more, uncertain. So we are definitely in a place of pivot. And tonight I want to look at Abraham in Genesis 12 and his journey, and how we can relate biblically to what Abraham, the uncertainty of being called out, moved out, set out, sent out, whatever that is for you right now, and how you adapt to change. And I hope that something will be said tonight to encourage you if you find yourself in some place of influx, a place of change, and maybe we can help you to adjust or even to move out from a stuck position. And, we're here to remind you that God is not bound by logic or logistics. And so sometimes change is not just in our mindset, it is our location. And I don't know where you are and where you find yourself in this present day, but I truly believe that Abraham's journey and the uncertainty of stepping out is something that we can all relate to. A few weeks ago, someone sent me a video of a woman who she worked for the government, and she had taken the deferred resignation program. And she was stating in this video how she just felt so lost. And this particular day that she recorded the video, she said, I'm having a hard time with this. And that she felt like when she took it, that she had heard from God, and it was the best deal for her. And she felt good about it. But as the deferred resignation program ended, which was October the 1st, she was saying how she missed the people, she missed the work, the government job, and the security that it held, and how she was just battling with that decision, the decision that she made. Now, I want to, in full disclosure, I too was a government employee, and I took the deferred resignation program. And I remember sitting at my desk that day, when we were called back into the office, which was a pivot in itself, because I actually live 300 miles away from my office. But mandatorily, we had to return to back to the office. And so I had made my mind up, I'm going to do this and just get through it. Look at it with a positive mindset. It's just an adjustment. But when I did go in, I packed and I stayed with a relative of mine. And thank you, Deborah, for letting me come and hang out with you and giving up your space to me. But that I got in on that Monday, which we had to return to the office. And then that Tuesday morning, the deferred resignation program was, we got an email of that being a possibility. So by that Friday, I made the decision that I was going to take it during the week, and they were going to look at it. I think I hit submit on Tuesday afternoon at 1. And so right before lunch. So I hit submit and I said, okay, Karen, I'm not looking back. And by Friday, that was my last day, actually having to go to the office. And the way that I looked at it, and still look at it now, not a challenge against this woman, but what I am saying is change affects each of us differently. And the way that I look at it as, wow, where in the world do you get the opportunity to receive all of your benefits and not go into the office? And it was like an 8-month period where you get your pay, still accruing leave, all of these things. And it was just a benefit for me. And I did not have to make the pilgrimage from Pflugerville, Texas into Dallas, Fort Worth area where my so how you look at change, as I said, how are you with change? How do you handle change? And what role does fear play in changing environments? And we are now in a time where the environment is changing as the sun comes up and then goes down. We're in a changing environment all the time. We're seeing news information about how the nation is changing from one thing to the other, one issue to the other. There's just change, but how you look at change, your approach to change, and what drives my behavior when adapting to change. And I'm relating again back to this woman, and I could feel her pain and the plight of where she was. She missed the government security. She missed the environment. And I just remember commenting on that, though it was sent to me from someone else, but I did comment and I said, sister, I said, tap in to your skills and your talents and just, what can be transferred? What skills can you transfer to something else? That all is not lost. And my heart went out to her, because oftentimes when change comes, the uncertainty is what we are left with, rather than looking at the possibility, we go immediately to the uncertainty and the feeling of, what am I missing? Missing the people, missing your coworkers, missing the family. But, and I began to think about Abram in Genesis 12, when God told him to leave his father's house to leave, that he had to go. And so I can only imagine, which I can relate, um, what that must have been like for Abram. Leave your country, your relatives, and your father's house to go to a place that I have prepared for you. But there was no map. There was no, there was no what you're going to encounter along the way. And so I can only imagine what this woman was feeling once we got to October the 1st and there was no more paycheck. What do you do? How do you adapt to change? And I just want to say to you, if you're in that season, if you're in a season where that inner nudge, you're being nudged and it's like, okay, I'm feeling something, or I've got to take a step, I need to do something different, or you feeling like the season is over and there's more for me out there than where I'm currently standing. And then you might be feeling like, I can't stay here. And maybe you're being stretched. I know it's uncomfortable. And sometimes it feels misunderstood that you can't even articulate your feelings to someone. But I want to say to you tonight, you are not crazy and you are not alone. You're being called out and you are not lost. You're only being repositioned. And that's the one thing about a pivot. A pivot always begins with a divine or inner instruction, something that's pulling on you, something that's saying to you, hey, I feel like I'm led out. I feel like I need to change something. I need to get up from here. And in Genesis 12, God tells Abram, leave your country, your relatives, your father's house. And, I'm sure that even to hear that, it wasn't easy. And it wasn't a suggestion. It was an instruction. It was a directive. And present day, a deep knowing that we have, when a season is over, you start to feel like I'm not meant to stay. I said, there's more for me. And I want to encourage you, to talk to God in the discomfort. Like, don't try to manage it yourself, because you might mismanage the moment if you manage it yourself. And just ask God, give me comfort with what I'm feeling. Show me, give me clarity. You're only being called to move. But when you're called to move and you don't know what you're moving to, I get it. I totally get it. And I always say journaling. I have so many journals. I see a piece of paper, it might be an envelope from a bill, and something hits me, I would write it down and come back to it later, maybe tuck it in a book or something. But it's sometimes to just write it out, a thought that comes to you, it gives more clarity when you read it back. Yes, I hear it here, or yes, I hear it here. But when you write it down and you read it back, it just gives you even more understanding sometimes, time to mull it over, time to look at it when it's in writing rather than in your head. You might be in a place where you may be having a recurring dream, or sometimes how God will have a repeated theme where he keeps highlighting something in particular to your life. I was talking to my grandbaby's mom. Hey, Shay. I was talking to her a few years ago, and just God put on my heart just, to call her. And I said, hey, where are you? I said, I don't know. I said, I feel like Holy Spirit just needs me to get in your business. And so she was at that time going to get her counseling license, and she had to get her LPC. Well, I didn't know what it was. I was like, it's some initials or something. I don't know. And I said, but you need to pick that back up. And so I said, what is it? And she said, LPC. And she also said that she had been seeing all these different license plates with LPC. And she began to send me pictures every time she would see a license plate with LPC. And so God just has a way that he gets to us with a repeated theme, highlighting something. It may be letters, it may be numbers, day, a song. Something is going to come to you to let you, nudging you. That it's like, okay, he's kind of giving you that little tug. And I want to challenge you, Don't dismiss it as a random thing. And when it clearly is an instruction, and don't just, put it off, but take the time to just sit in that thing and just listen and see how far you can get in listening. Because sometimes just to push it aside, to think that it's gonna go away, it keeps coming back in that dream repeated theme, or God highlighting it, or even having somebody to call you. And in your time of prayer, you still will get an understanding. But leaving what's familiar to step into unknown, as Abram did, it also leads you to an identity, and it calls you to leave a comfort of identity to a new identity, an inherited structure where God is saying, okay, I see you as this, and you are seeing your situation, your current familiarity, comfort zone, network of people, that inherited a structure that we get with family. And just as he said to him, leave your family, leave your father's house. A pivot means releasing old roles, outdated identities, limited environments. Sometimes people who can't go where you're going, you also have to leave those people too. And so when God is calling you out, and just as I took that, I remember hitting that submit button on that email, and I knew that there was no looking back for me. There was no turning back. But I didn't realize what I did the minute that I hit send. I actually was in my pivot at that time. And so when you're pivoting, old things begin to pass away, and it's like, okay, I'm not even knowing what's going on. I'm not feeling, this. Hold on one second. I'm not feeling also all of these things that are coming my way. It's not making sense. It's not making sense. But a pivot releases old roles, and a new identity begins to come forward. Abram received the promise as he walks. He received that promise and instruction, but the promise began when he began to walk. The promise began when he began to walk. He had that along the way grace that God gives us when we take that step. And it's easy to look back, as the woman in the video. She began to look back, and she was like, I miss the people. I miss going to work every day. I miss that. But if she tapped into her skills and she saw whatever she was applying to that job, she may have been able, to apply to something new in her life, transferring those skills to something else. God gave an instruction, but he also gives protection with that instruction. So that along the way grace, he makes sure you have what you need. He makes sure you meet the right people along the way. He makes sure that you're encouraged, that you're strengthened along the way. And something that when we have to leave something, it leads us to a loss mindset. I remember, I think I'm going to say last year, I just had this feeling. I asked my son, I was like, have you ever had a feeling like your friends are shifting? And wasn't anything going on with any of my friends, but I had that feeling. I just believed that God was preparing me for where I was going. And it's part of the journey. I probably will be walking alone, probably be walking some things out that maybe I could not be the old role of Karen, that I was transforming into a new role that I had not seen, but I was still longing for. And I felt the loss. I just started to feel it. Nobody said anything, no falling out or anything amongst my friends, but I began to feel the loneliness of stepping out and stepping away into what God was pushing me and nudging me to. So the mindset, the habit, a role, a relationship, or a pattern Those are the things when God calls you out, he's calling you from those familiar things, the things that kind of hold us up in comfort and hold us up, as she said, in security. She said, I miss the security of it. I miss the security of a government job. And the pivot, it begins with a divine and that inner instruction. But the minute that you take that pivot and you hear that instruction, you begin to act on it, that's when it starts. It starts at that time. And again, Abram, he received the promise as he was walking it out. As he was walking it out, the promise was being manifested. And so sometimes there is a grief in the pivot. There's a grieving time where it's like, okay, man, I feel that loss, and I could just feel her. I had friends for years that I worked with at the government, and now here I am. I won't see them, for periods of time. It won't be that I can pop Teams and send a message. I don't have the access to them that I had before. Of course, I can pick up the phone and call or text, but it's not that everyday camaraderie that you have with friends that you work with. That becomes family. So I could totally relate to this woman and feel her anguish, but the adapting to I had already done when I hit send on that email, it was done for me. It was done. I didn't know what my getting ready to be like, but I knew when I hit send that there was no looking back. But that does not mean you don't have a grieving process, that you might be in grief now, in influx, where we know that again, and I know that I have said this on the last few episodes of Remove Logic, that there are government jobs that are no more. There are layoffs that are happening because prices are rising and companies are having to lay off due to the tariffs. And so I can only imagine what people are dealing with in uncertainty. And with that uncertainty comes the grief of what is no more, what I don't have access to that I used to have access to. And this almost happens overnight. And I want to say to you that it is okay to mourn that loss of the familiar thing. It's okay to mourn the absence of something that was and no longer there. Even as you move towards what will be, you still look and long for what was. I mean, that's just human nature. And it's okay to mourn that. Abram, when he did leave country, those are familiar. That's a whole country of people that I'm leaving. Leave your relatives and leave your father's house. The father's house represents not only the lineage, but your culture. How do we operate? How do we think? What do we do? The familiar things that I know will be there. Hey, when I need to cry, a shoulder to cry on, I can go to daddy. I can go to mom. I can go to cousins. I can go. But in that leaving, you're leaving a whole group of your network. And just as this woman was saying, I miss the people. The people. So leaving what's familiar to step out into the unknown, it gives you a sense of unsettlement. And I again, this woman's video, it was so real to me because I could relate to her, but I did relate in the fact that I couldn't relate in the fact that I had already adapted to the change. I knew October 1st was coming, but I had to also trust God for whatever my next was, not knowing what was next for me as well. So grieving the loss of something, grieving the loss of someone, grieving the loss of a place or a thing in a pivot, loss of job. It could be a health related pivot, something that just came on you, and how you now have to manage this was this yesterday, but because of this or this information, this new has come, and I wasn't ready for it. I was have how many of y'all have heard of the book Who Moved My Cheese? And it's a cute little book that I read a few years ago, but this week I just compelled to listen to it on Audible. And it was so much good information on change. It's about change. These cute little characters that are going to this cheese station. They find this cheese station and they're just having the best time because there's all kinds of cheese. But going there every day, the cheese was being eaten down. And finally, one day they went and there was no more cheese. And so each character had a different response to the cheese being gone. And one of the characters kept saying, "Who moved my cheese? Who moved my cheese?" And we all respond to change differently. But one of the things that was so profound in this book is that you need to be ready for the change because they're always moving the cheese. And we are in a place now where the cheese is being moved, as I said, almost on an hourly basis. You wake up one day and then it's this and go to bed. And it's by the time bedtime comes, it's that. So one of the things to be sure about is the fact that the cheese is going to be moved, that nothing stays the same. And if you're in a place of that type of movement, God will call you out. There will be no clarity other than the fact that you know you've been called out, other than the fact that you know something has been shaken up and there's a change on the horizon, and I've got to adapt to this change. And when he calls you out without full clarity, you do have that fact, and that what is the old saints say, the blessed assurance that you know that God has got you mind. You know, you have to trust and believe going to work out for your good. Movement without full clarity. God gives Abram a map. He simply says, go to the land I will show you. In other words, start walking, get up and move. I'll show you along the way. I'll show you. And you might be in that position right now where God is just simply saying, go. You might feel that nudge that something has shifted and I've got to do something different, but I don't know what to do. I don't have all the information, but I feel compelled to go. I feel compelled to move. And I get understanding. You move and then you see. You move and then you see. It makes me think of, I think it's ludicrous. When I move, you move just like that. You move and then you see. You decide and then it aligns. You decide and then it aligns. It aligns with his will. It aligns with it aligns with that word of promise that he gave you. You have to trust and be led into transformation. You have to trust and be led into your transformation. Again, this new role, this new identity, this new me that's coming forth. I don't even know where I'm going. I don't even know the people that I'm getting ready to meet. Yes, I'm longing for the people that I have behind, but there's some new people that I'm going to meet along the way. And so there's a transformation here in you. Calls us out. He already knows. He knows the journey. He knows that journey. And when I tell you that pivot, when you take that first step, you're already walking in promise. Leaving what's familiar with the uncertainty of knowing of the unknown, you are moving to a place where the movement is without full clarity, but it's still a movement. And we know that God is moving forward progression. He's alive, and it's always something that's going to be a benefit to you. So I'm saying to you, you move and then you see. You decide and then it aligns. It aligns with his will. It aligns with his way. What's that song by Shekinah Glory? If I told you what I really need, would your heart and soul say yes? If I told you the cost of it, would you say yes? If I told you were going to have to get up and leave, Your father's house, would you still say yes? If I told you that comfort zone, familiar place, you still say yes. But when you think about, again, you don't have all the plan, you don't have the full clarity. All you know, judged, I'm being pushed, or this is closed up and I got to do something. I can't sit here. I can't remain here. That this is no more. Just like that cheese station, the cheese is gone. The cheese has been moved. It's time to get up and go and look for some new cheese. And so a pivot, it rarely comes with a plan, but it's still a pivot. And when I think about basketball and how that pivot, you determine, okay, what is my pivot foot? And then which direction am I going to go? Am I going to go in a direction that's going to set me up for that better shot, that better opportunity? But you still have to make the pivot. You don't always get all the answers first, and it's normal for us to say, I'd rather wait till everything feels good before I move. But that is not the way oftentimes that God deals with us. We'll get a portion of it. Again, get all the answers, but you move and then you see. You move and then you see. Energy of moving, believing with that expectation, and then you move again to that trust-led transformation. The next step is the obedience. It's the mindset instead of the full plan control, because we have to have that full plan, but it's a mindset to move. It's a mindset to be obedient. It's a mindset to trust instead of having this plan. And I can only imagine sitting there and saying, God, I'm not doing anything until you give me the full plan. I'm not going to move until you give me the full plan. I've been moving continuously in a place of obedience. And sometimes it's unsettling even for those around you when you move in faith. But they come to understand that that's just what she does. That's what he does. That's God deals with him or deals with her. But the obedience becomes easy the more you do. So again, it becomes a mindset. It's a shift. It's a shift. It's a change in my old identity, my old role, or my old way, my old pattern, the way that I thought. It's those little by little steps that the Bible talks about, little by little. And then you take that step by step. And eventually you'll see yourself like, wow, okay, this is all right. It feels okay. I'm good today. Tomorrow might be a little shaky, but today I'm good. So little by little, you do get there. But it's that trust-led transformation, because your mind is being transformed. Your mind is being renewed, that it's all right. That the thing that I was looking for, the cheese has been moved. And now I need to go find another cheese station. I need to go look for another opportunity. I need to go in on myself and see what skills that I have that can transfer. It might be the beginning of, again, a new business. It might be the beginning of looking for another way, an alternative way for needs being met, where the ends they might be waving at each other, but God may have a way where those ends will meet rather than waving at each other. And so don't wait on the full plan and full clarity. Move, because whenever your movement starts, it's going to begin to line up with the will of God. And I want to talk to you next about the promise. And Abram, he had a promise, and the promise is attached to the pivot. It's attached to the pivot. When God sends you out, there's a promise already spoken over where you're going, your destiny. There's all of that is already assigned to the pivot. For Abram, his identity expanded. Who he was, his role expanded. The word says, I will make your name great. I will make your name great. And then his influence changed. So there's a promise attached to the pivot. You don't know, but once he started moving out there, that promise that was already spoken, he began to see, I will make your name great. And that's influence. Again, the old role, those old identities begin to change immediately. You begin to walk out promise, walk out in this pivot. You will be a blessing. His legacy began to come forth. He started legacy. So while you're sitting around family and sitting in your, God is saying, okay, I need you to go over here, because this right here is going to release legacy. It's going to release influence. It's going to release that name becoming great, where your name is being spoken in rooms that you haven't walked in, places that you didn't consider that your name would carry you. He said, you will be a blessing. All families of the earth will be blessed through you. So they getting up and going. It releases what's on the inside of you that somebody else is waiting on. Somebody else is needing what's on the inside of you, but it has to be released, and it begins to unfold. Again, that's that transformation, that trust-led transformation. Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. And every true pivot carries a promise. It carries the promise of what? A new identity. It carries the promise of new influence. It carries the promise of a new mission and new generational impact. And I don't know about you, that's exciting. All the new that comes with it. You know, when God says old things have passed away, behold, I do a new thing. Do you not perceive it? And you're in a place where when God calls you out, no, you don't perceive it. You don't really have a true understanding. Again, you've stepped out on something with an unclear plan. You've stepped out on something that does not make sense. This rug that has been snatched out from under you is no longer there as a place of security. But I dare you, if you take the challenge and take the steps and step out in this pivot, the promise is not random. It's already encoded in you. It's already part of your divine design. It's already part of God's plan for your life. Again, it is not a random thing. And I just want to encourage you to ask God for the promise that's hidden in this pivot. God, show me the promise hidden in this pivot. Show me what's on the inside, what you've already purposed and promised for me that I'm not seeing. Because sometimes knows he's like, I can't show it to you all at once. If I give you everything, it might scare you. It might run. Look, I always say, God laugh and say, ooh, if you show me too much, I'm gonna run back up on the porch. I'm gonna go in the house. I'm going back in the house if you show me too much. And sometimes the fear of what God will show you, it'll cause you to go back. You know, Abram many times wanted to go back home to comfort a family, go back to of the country and the culture and the familiar things that he had to walk away from. But when you trust God with the comfort of what you don't know, he'll make sure that along the way, grace, he'll make sure that you get just what you need along the way, that it's going to be all right. I know we out here now. And once you out here, there's no turning back. I knew, again, when I hit sin, Karen, there's no turning back. There's no turning back. But I had such a peace with driving down 35 and coming on back home that I did not have to go and trudge into 300 miles away from my home, that you already told me that this was the land that you were sending me to. So when that season was over, I had to go. I had to make peace with it. Again, how do you adapt to change? What is role that fear plays when change comes in your life? How do you manage it? How do you handle change? Do you run squarely in? And some people run away. Some people operate in fear and say, you know what, I don't know what's out there, so I'm just going to stay where I am in my comfort zone. Everybody handles change differently. But I want to encourage you that God already knows the plan that he has for your life. And if you trust him and what's already encoded in you, that part of him that he's hidden in you, that he said, you know what, I already know the promise hidden in this pivot. If you just take the pivot, he'll show it to you along the way. Ask him, God, show me the promise hidden in this pivot. Can you imagine if you obey what the shift could mean for your children? Can you imagine if you took this shift, what it would mean for your community? Can you imagine if you took this shift, what it would be for your future self? Again, Abram, as we read the scripture, he became Abraham. His name was Abraham. He had to step out as Abram. And then as he began to walk, the identity of Abraham began to manifest. It began to be revealed to him. He was walking out his future self. So I want to ask you tonight, what you were not afraid? What would your life look like? What would your life look like if you were not afraid? Now, I want to also, I know I talked about the familiarity and how when you're moving out, you lose people, you lose friends, and it's not easy because the pivot redefines your blueprint. It redefines what you thought of yourself, and it gives you the blueprint that God sent you here for and what you are to do. And you have to, I call it being fluid. You gotta get in the flow and move as God moves. But the one thing in that reality is that not everybody can go with you. Not everybody can go with you in this pivot, in this change. And so when you take the wrong people with you, it complicates your journey. And we know that by scripture. Lot, Abram's nephew, he took him with him. It began to be an issue along the way. And he was instructed that he had to leave him. Lot wasn't a part of the original instruction. Again, we can try to shift and interject and put the variables in and put some things in that God did not tell us to put in. But Lot was not a part of the original instruction. And so I want to ask you, who is God asking you that you might need to distance yourself from in this season? Maybe create those healthy boundaries, not bitterness, but betterness, to be better. And obedience, it clears a path. It really does. When you begin to obey God, it'll clear a path for you. Like, wow. And we say he will make a way out of no way. When you obey God, the path becomes clear. And sometimes something or someone will fall off. And when you don't obey him, disobedience clutters the path. Obedience clears it. It cleans that pathway. But when you're disobedient, clutters the path, clutters it. So understanding and knowing that not everybody can go with you. I mean, clearly the scriptures said, leave your country, leave your father's house, leave those familiar things. And what does that look like? Again, I can relate. As I heard, Austin is for you. And I literally had to move where my hometown, which is Fort Worth, Texas. That's where I was born and raised. And so to get up and leave and nobody here that knew, no family. But I actually love it. It gives me room. It's like I've expanded. Again, just like Abram, your identity changes because becoming what God says you are. Again, that removes logic because logic binds us. It keeps us work of understanding that this is the only role that I am to walk in. And I say to you, no, it's not. There's more for you and there's more to you than you're actually seeing. And so with this pivot and truly understand, call to pivot, Abram's journey and your modern, you are in a shift right now. And in that shift, there is what? The leaving what's familiar and stepping into the unknown. There's movement without full clarity. And then the understand and knowing the joy and the peace in knowing that the promise is attached to the pivot. And if you are not clear and you don't see the promise again, ask God, what is the promise that's hidden in this pivot? What is it that you have for me that you called me out for? I'm not seeing it. I'm not it, but I feel the nudge. And so just encouraging you that we would truly understand that a is a safe. It's a pivot is disruptive. Yes, it is, but it's also sacred. A pivot is an identity shifting moment. A pivot is uncomfortable. A pivot is required for elevation. A pivot is the doorway to your destiny. And if you are in a place where you're feeling that shift, and I don't know, but I'm feeling calling me out, you're calling me to leave, or look, the door might have closed and you're still standing in the hallway saying, knock, 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 let me in. But that door has closed, and God is saying, behold, I've opened a door that no man can shut. I have stood before you an open door. And so don't stand in the hallway at knocking at a closed, because the pivot is necessary. A pivot is the doorway to your destiny. And so my prayer for you this week, Remove Logic community, is that you stop fighting the nudge and start walking it out. You'll get that along the way, grace from God along the way. There were some mistakes that he made. He brought the wrong person with him. God didn't give him that instruction, but sometimes our heart, we want to help as well. And God is saying, leave all that alone. I got that. That cannot go. It's going to be trouble along the way. But my prayer for you is that you stop fighting the nudge and you start walking it out, that you go to led place, that transformation, be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, because clearly you're in a shift. I'm in a shift. We all in a shift. And we've got to stop and ask God, what's next? What's the promise in this pivot for all of us? And move out the full mouth and release what he's asking you to leave. I know that's hard. Let me say that again. My prayer for you is that you're able to look, that you'll be strengthened to release what he's asking you to leave, and lean into what's attached to your obedience. Lean into that thing that God has for you. And I want to encourage you that you take the time and that you hear God. Listen, make sure you heard right. You know, it's okay to go back to God and talk about it again. God, did I hear you right? Did I hear you? Are you calling me? Yeah, go back and ask again if you are not sure. So I want to encourage you this week. I know that we are on our way, to Thanksgiving. I won't be here Thanksgiving night. So I want to give you a happy Thanksgiving tonight. I hope that your holiday is beautiful. Family time and family gathering is beautiful. I pray that those that might be stretched, for food, that God will open doors and, pantries, that there will be a blessing, that your pantry will not be bare, in Jesus' name. So I want to encourage you, if you find yourself in a pivot, if you find yourself where there's a shift, where God is calling you out to more, where you're seeing that, look, the brook may have dried up and he's sending you on to another city, another place, another town for another destiny helper, as Elijah went to the widow of Zarephath, and she was a destiny helper, and he helped her and she helped him. So be open for that. Be open for what God has for you, because he does not lead you out and leave you there. That's not who we serve. We know that. If this episode spoke to you in your season, share it with someone else who may be in the middle of a shift. Don't get caught in the shift. You got to move with the shift. But tag me, tag Remove Logic. Send me a message and let me know. Drop a comment if you're in a pivot and you're walking through it right now. Remember, God is not bound by logic or logistics. So whatever it is, I dare you to take the framework off, take the limits off, and allow yourself to live a limitless life in God, and watch what God will do for you. I'm currently in a place where I'm like, okay, God, you my head up, but guess what? It's okay, because he's messing my head up. If it was somebody else, I might be a little worried. But I know, even though there are things that are happening and shifts taking place, I have learned to move with the shift. I want to encourage you, remove logic. Make room for the miracles that God has for you on the journey, along the way, that along the way grace. And watch and see what God will do if you take your hands off. Again, I'm your host, Karen Ray Lacey, and this has been Remove Logic Radio Show. I hope that something has been done, either smile or look, great level of expectation, because I know that God is able, and it is not over until He says it's over. Remove logic, because God is not bound by logic or logistics. So be encouraged. If you find yourself in this pivot, you find yourself where there is a nudge, take the nudge, don't fight it. Walk out in faith and see what God has for you. Be encouraged. Happy Thanksgiving to you. Have a wonderful holiday, and I will see you on the other side of what? December. Okay? Beyond November, we're going on to December. I'll see you guys in a few weeks. Have a wonderful holiday season. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Remove Logic Radio Show.